Yesterday afternoon, I was driving down the road, not the highway, but the dirt road that goes up to our house, in this sort of utility vehicle that we call the Gator, because that's what the manufacturer John Deere branded it as. But I guess they're also known in some places or some circles as a side-by-side. Anyway, I was driving it side by side with my dog. He loves to sit in the passenger seat and go for a ride on the Gator. We were going down to get the garbage bin. And I saw coming up the road my neighbor. So I pulled off to the side, and he'd been doing the same thing, getting his garbage bin from the side of the highway. And he stopped and rolled down his window, so I turned off the motor, and we had a little chat about the sorts of things that neighbors talk about when they have a chance meeting like that. For example, we talked about the weather. And he mentioned that he'd grown up here. Actually, I think he grew up on the property, which had been a larger parcel that belonged to his parents and was subdivided the time that my own house was built. Anyway, he said, you should go back and look at last year's temperature records. As in November, we had days in the 70s. And in fact, for several years before that, it was just crazy how warm it was. And isn't it nice to have a real November with frost and snow and rain and cold? And I said, yeah, it's fantastic, it's beautiful. And I was tempted to say something about global warming. But I've been warned by my in-laws who used to live in the house where I live. Whatever you do, don't talk to Mitch about politics. You won't like what he has to say. But then it struck me as confusing and confused that we think of global warming as politics. Because it's not politics. It is a natural fact that has been confirmed by observation. And the observations have verified the models produced by the theory. And the atmosphere has been sampled, and the concentrations of carbon dioxide and methane are increasing. And that carbon dioxide has been isotopically identified as being produced by the burning of fossil fuels by human beings. So to say that global warming is political is like saying that the Gulf Stream is political, or volcanic eruption is political. It's not. But the confusion is understandable for a variety of reasons. One, for example, that the fossil fuel industry's own scientists, when they began to discover back in the 1960s that this was happening, and we can look at industry journals from that time, and now folks, investigative journalists have obtained internal memoranda and so forth. They knew this was going on and decided to confuse the issue, and undertook a lengthy and expensive public relations campaign, and they hired their own scientists and their own politicians to put forward the idea that this isn't really happening or might not be happening, or maybe it's all just a bunch of alarmism by some tree huggers or who knows what. But I think there's an even deeper reason for the confusion, which is that if it's really true as it is, it means the end of something. It means the end of something big. It means the end of a way of life, if you will, and a whole system, a whole modern world of industrial expansion that has been made possible by fossil fuels. We don't know exactly how to transition to what is next, because it's such a huge transition. And so we're confused, and we're scared, and our fear about what's ending and what could be coming is almost as big as our fear about November without rain, and the hurricanes and the wildfires and the melting ice caps and the droughts and the heat waves. And what it was exactly that we set out to do in this modern era was to transform the world. And actually, Christianity has a lot to do with it. The way that the human being was put at the very center of our understanding of the whole purpose of God's creation. Not just at the center, but at the pinnacle. And we were liberated from a whole lot of traditional ways of understanding things. Individual initiative and the idea that human beings had the agency to organize their societies and to develop technologies in order to create for themselves a kind of material abundance, a kind of ease, a kind of security, a kind of health that would have seemed like a paradise on earth to our ancestors. But now we come to find that at the same time as we were creating this paradise on earth, we were also creating a hell on earth. And now it feels like it's coming for us. Judgment is coming upon us. And we realize that we forgot something really important, which is that the real transformation that the Gospels and the prophets speak of is not a material transformation of our circumstances, as amazing as that has been, and as incredible all of the things that have happened that made possible that we wouldn't want to reverse. Like the fact that people from so many different cultures and religious backgrounds and languages and tribal identities have encountered each other. We now live in a global society, as a global humanity. An incredible transformation. And yet so many of us are fearful to actually embrace the implications of that fact, which is that we need to make a further transformation, a transformation of our hearts, where we think no longer of what is good for me, what is good for my family, what is good for my tribe, what is good for my class, what is good for my nation. But we think of humanity and humanity as connected inextricably with the whole of creation on this limited, finite, fragile, beautiful earth. A further spiritual transformation that somehow we know we have to make, and we can't do it ourselves. We're simply not clever enough to figure it out for ourselves. Only God can do it for us. Which is what Jesus was trying to say all along. If we can trust God enough to lay down our defenses, to step out of our selfishness, to open our minds to see how deeply interconnected we all are, so that the fortunes of that poor, stricken person who has to flee from Venezuela because their economy is collapsed and their environment is destroyed and their society is crumbling. If that person is not happy and healthy and well and hopeful, then I can't be. So we're still hoping, still waiting, and still also, I guess, trying to find an escape. Lots of us are trying to find an escape through drugs or through TV or through kind of obsessive politics where we simplify, who's responsible for our predicament and blame them, and, or escape by flying to Mars, or by having our consciousness uploaded into a computer, or all kinds of crazy notions that we've been coming up with of how we're going to get out of this dilemma. Because we're beginning to realize that what's coming to an end is not simply modernity, not simply the fossil fuel age, but the 66 million years of Earth evolution since the last great extinction. The Cenozoic era, what Thomas Berry called the lyric phase of Earth evolution, with the conifers and the flowering plants and the insects and the birds and the mammals. And it's collapsing around us because of human selfishness and short-sightedness and greed. What we really, really, really need is to be judged. We really need to stand naked before God and say, we can't do this without you. The way that we're living is impossible. It cannot continue. Please help us see who we really are, so that we can somehow break through to the other side. Break through the future that only you can create for us through love. We have to stay alert, says Jesus, to the possibility of love, even on a diminished planet, even in the midst of so much heartbreaking human suffering, even with billions of people on the move, just seeking some place where they can be safe and bring up their children with the possibility of a livable future. We must remain alert and not despair. Don't fall into fear. Be awake what love can still do. That's what Paul writes to the church in Thessalonica in his first letter. This beautiful expression of the mind of Christ. He's writing to this little community of people who he met for a brief time, just a few weeks, when he was passing through Thessalonica, and he went to the synagogue on 3 Sabbath days. And he spoke to them about the Scriptures and about a Messiah who was crucified and rose again from the dead through the supreme love of God. And some of them believed it. Some Jews, some Greeks, they embraced that teaching of Paul as the best news they'd ever heard. And he writes them and he says, I'm so grateful for you because I've been so worried that because I was driven out of there by my enemies who came to slander me and tell, you not to believe what I'd said and that I was just a troublemaker, a rabble-rouser, just forget that guy Paul and all that nonsense about Jesus of Nazareth. But I hear from Timothy that you're holding fast. You still believe what I told you. You're still gathering together to pray, to break bread, and to tell the story. Thank you. I'm so grateful to God that this is so. And I can't wait to see you again. Can't wait to see you again. And I pray that you will stay awake. And that you will love each other and everyone, just as we have loved you. Pure Jesus. And in fact, it's reading that this week, it's like Paul is speaking for Jesus to us, saying, thank you for sticking together. Thank you for continuing to gather. Thank you for not trying to escape Christianity, which, has done all these crazy things to the world. And yet, how are we going to get out of this without it? Thank you. And keep loving one another. Keep loving everyone as I have loved you. Because I long to see you again. And I will see you again. I will come again to be with you. On the other side of your struggles, your confusion, your crisis of history, you will meet me there. You will be naked before me. You will not be able to hide anything about yourself, about your society, about history, about everything that's been done to the world. It's all going to be laid bare before me. And I will save you with my love. I will look upon you with the purest compassion, with undying love. And that's all you'll need.